Hello and welcome back to Bottom Line East Africa. Now, just days to Uganda's general election that's slated for the 18th of February, the country has purchased armored police carriers to quell any possible violence that might occur during the election period. An unspecified number of the vehicles labeled Uganda Police were spotted at the Kenyan port of Mombasa. Sources say an advanced consignment of similar vehicles and some are said to have already left the port for Uganda. Tear gas vehicles, water cannons and pepper sprayers are among the vehicles awaiting clearance at the port. Uganda is heading to the polls that are feared may turn chaotic following allegations that opposition groups are organizing militia to cause disruptions in case they're not satisfied with the election outcome. All right, and just taking a look at the political climate in Uganda and what's going on ahead of the elections that are just now days away. Solomon Serwanja spoke exclusively to Leonard Okello from the Uhuru Institute, a political analyst, on just what his thoughts are on the mood and the atmosphere and whether Ugandans believe that there will be a free and fair election in that country. Take a look.
Yes, indeed, Yvonne, it's just a couple of days to the D-Day when Uganda goes to the polls. That is on the 18th of February 2016. And there is growing mistrust among Ugandans. We want to know why and what does it mean for the country, especially after the polls. Joining us tonight on Bottom Line East Africa is Leonard Okello, who is the Executive Director of the Uhuru Institute. Leonard, thank you so much for joining us. We want to understand, why are Ugandans not trusting in the electoral system to deliver a free and fair election?
Well, really, Solomon, if you care to remember the history of Uganda, we have really not had an election which has not been followed by a lot of questions and queries about its credibility. 1962, we had credibility issues. 1980 elections was form of chaos, violence, and all that kind of thing, and a lot of election rigging, and which is what was the reason given for going to the bush by the NRMA under Yoweri Museveni. And we had a 5-year war, guerrilla war, as a result of election rigging. What makes it more complicated is that after the war and a loss of 500,000 Ugandans in the Luero Triangle War, then the last 3 or so elections we have had in the country, there has been cases of election. And in fact, when Kizza basically went to court, court clearly accepted that there were a lot of irregularities, except it was not large enough to cause the rerun, which really is it brought a new legal problem for elections in Africa, actually, because I think Kenya, they used a similar thing in the last election in Kenya, and that there was problems, but it was not large enough to cause. The judges actually referred to the Uganda ruling, and it worked quite well for Uhuru Kenyatta too in Kenya. So really, if you look at that, the fact that we have had a history of mistrust, a history of election problems already. The second thing is that the fact that those who went to war for elections came back and similarly having election problems, rigging questions going on with cases in court like that. And more importantly, because election has become too expensive. When people go to election, it's a do or die agenda. If you lose, you are like the world has come to an end. So everybody does everything to try to justify that elections are either rigged or they were unfairly defeated.
Well, I want to come back to you. You said that what took the NRM in the bush was to fight
because election rigging. That's what they told us. Yeah.
Yes. And do you think this regime has done enough to get vote rigging out of the electoral process, or the situation has even worsened?
I think actually it has become more exotic, more complicated the way election rigging takes place, with the IT system in place, with communication having much better than what it was in 1980. Election rigging has become more complicated. I think the other thing which has also become a perpetual problem in an election is the role of security or military scare. Every time there is election just about to take place in this country, the head of state, the commander-in-chief, often comes to radio and says, opposition are about to organize violence, and the army will going to be brought in to make sure there is peace and security and stability.